I was about to remind you.
Yes, thank you. So I'll record this part and then we'll go off camera for the end. And I know I just gave a quick intro, but I'd like for each of you to say a little more about you. And maybe also as you introduce yourself, you can talk just a little bit about your past, how in the past you have found yourself maybe caught up in hustle culture. So Erica, I'll start with you this time.
Okay. I actually think I want to start off with the piece of getting caught in hustle culture, and then I'll tell you about me. And interestingly enough, I think hustle culture is something that I grew up with it being embedded in what was normalized. This is how you work. This is how you live. If you're not working, if you're not moving fast enough, what are you doing? You're wasting time. Why can't you do more? And so the thought of like not working multiple jobs is like, what do you mean? What else are you doing? Even once I had kids, it's like, but you can just come back to work, right? So there's always been hustle there. And I think it was so normalized no matter what I did that to all of a sudden be like, I can't do more because I can't rest. I can't recuperate. I can't try to regenerate any part of myself. And that's just in this life. That's not even considering the epigenetics of what type of exhaustion has been passed down. People kind of are like, what do you mean? So before the conversation became hustle culture, there was a very stark reminder physically, mentally, and emotionally that, hey, this is not a sustainable speed and you're going to have to figure something out. And so for me, as someone that at this point in my life, I've had multiple careers. Again, my name is Erica Courdae. I have been in the beauty industry, hair and makeup for over 26 years, and I've been in multiple areas of that particular part. I've been an instructor. I've been I taught cosmetology at a Paul Mitchell Academy. I have had salons, I've been managers, I've done weddings, I've done all the things. And so I know exactly what it is to feel like move faster, do more, get more done. And then I moved into coaching and consulting, which is where I am now. And that's guiding folks to reconnect with their sense of self, recalibrate their discernment, and regenerate their community so that you can reclaim your peace and cut out the bullshit. That's where I am now, because having community and actually figuring out what does that mean to heal yourself, to actually reintegrate into community, that's what matters to me, because we have to figure out how to sustain ourselves more and not be so dependent on a system that is only here for extraction.
Yeah, I'm just like, oh, yeah, that at the very end. Just yeah, that's a mic drop moment right there, Erica. Profit. Becky, you okay?
Yeah, sorry if you saw my faces because some people are having a hard time getting in and I'm trying to figure out why the link's not working. So if you see me over here looking exasperated, I apologize.
No, that's exactly what I saw. So I thought, is it
No,
me?
you're good.
Am I
Please
speaking too
continue
loud?
on. And I'm so sorry. I'm trying to figure out what, if anyone has the link they use to get into this room, could you drop it in the chat so that I can share it with the people who can't
It's
get
your
in?
link. It's your beckymollenkamp.com/Zoom.
Oh, that's the one that's working. Got it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
That's how I got in. Becky, am I meant to talk now? Okay. All right. To everyone who is watching and to everyone who's here live right now, thank you so much for coming to this forum today. So I'm Mai-kee Tsang. I use she, her pronouns, and in a nutshell, I help human first business owners get heard and hired for their work in the world. And that is through the power of guesting on podcasts, sustainable visibility, and really cultivating a culture of collaboration and compassion. So a lot of C's there. And so basically, how I got into, or rather how I got out of hustle culture. So kind of like the painting the picture of the journey. I come from a family of immigrants, and so that naturally meant that working hard was very much infused into every fiber of my being ever since I was a child. And I always was told to, work really hard in school and to not let up and not like allow myself the luxury of just being. And so being lazy was like, no, you're not allowed to be that at all. It's just not, doesn't compute as a allowable thing in this household. So I pretty much grew up with it. And then when it came to later on in my life, I found that I wanted to deviate from the traditional path that had been set for me. So my parents, they did not have the opportunity to pursue their academics. And so for me, it felt like a lot of the pressure was on me to go to university and, get a job in that particular way, because I have an older sister and I love her dearly. And because she chose not to go down that route, there's only one child left, which was me, to kind of like take on the pressure of two children. So that's what I did. But I kid you not, on day one of my university, I was studying psychology in London. Because I'd focused so much on meeting the expectations of my parents, like being in the top ranking, like top 30 ranked universities in the UK, as well as staying in London. So I was relatively close to home. I was so fixated on picking one that kind of like, if you imagine a Venn diagram of what dad wanted, what mum wanted, and what I need to study, the focal point was the university I chose. But on day one, I felt it. Every fiber in my being was like, this isn't for you. And it's not psychology in itself that wasn't for me, it's the way that it was taught. It was very much a biological research side versus the therapeutic side, which is what I really wanted to go into. And so I still like stuck it out anyway, because my year was also the last one before the university fees tripled in the UK. So it went from 3 grand a year to 9 grand a year. And so that also meant, okay, I'm just going to go into this. But I just kind of like gritted my teeth through it. And towards the end of my university years, I knew, do you know what? I don't want to pursue this. I'm going to start a business instead. And that happened in a very roundabout way, through a couple of horror stories that I probably am not going to divulge into. But let's just say it took a very dark period of my life after being mistreated in various relationships to have gotten to the point where I really wanted to create my own future that didn't depend on anyone else's um, approval. And so that is when I started my business. But when it came to hustle culture, it didn't leave me, because the first mentors I learned from, the ones that were really great from selling on stage or selling online, they got to me because they spoke to my very pain points and my fears. And I worked very closely with one of them for a long time. And when I look back in retrospect, oh, that was the epitome of hustle culture. So the reason why right now my life and my work is around helping people really show up in a way that works for them, that honors their capacity, the intersections of their identity, is because that is my quiet rebellion of how I'm unsubscribing from hustle culture, from the urgency culture, and really helping people find their own way in their businesses where they can be seen, where they can be visible in a way that doesn't dishonor their values and their needs. And so that is pretty much what I'm here for. Helping people unsubscribe from the hustle culture and being visible and seen on terms where they feel safe enough to do so.
And the reason that I specifically reached out to you, Mai-kee, was because how you sort of, I think the thing that helped you with the trajectory of your business was applying to be on 100 something podcasts, and then you ended up being on a bunch in a very short amount of time. And it all sort of feels a bit like, oh, it's that hustle and grind and that, urgency and all of those things. So I love that you mentioned you weren't free from it just because you started your own business. And I think so many of us start our own businesses saying like, I don't like corporate America. I don't like capitalism. I don't like what all this has done to me. So I'm gonna start my own business. And then we recreate the wheel for ourselves without even realizing it, because it's what we know, right? We swim in these
Yes.
waters. So why wouldn't we until we learn better? So can you sort of briefly talk about that experience of
Mm-hmm.
doing that whole process and
Yeah.
maybe what it helped you get to around hustle culture?
Yep, sure. So back in 2019, so it's going to be the 5-year anniversary. I'm going to do a special celebration this year. But back in 2019, I was at that point in my business where I had coasted so much on referrals and word of mouth that there was nothing in the pipeline. And that was entirely my fault, because I was like, oh, I'm fine for a while, I'll get the next referral. But no, I didn't do any of that. And so when I was in kind of a panic mode, I reached out to a couple of my mentors and they all told me the same thing. They said, you should guest on podcasts. People should know. And like, this is something that will live on the internet forever. So I challenged myself to pitch to 101 podcasters in 30 days. And side note, this is not a tale of inspiration, it's a tale of caution. And two is the fact that I chose such a big number because I had a couple of PR friends and they told me a traditional kind of booking rate is anywhere from 3 to 10%. So I thought, okay, it's a numbers game. Fair enough. So I thought, okay, 10 podcasts would be incredible. But I had a background in copywriting at this point and still do. And I got one in every three. And then it was a very quality problem of having too many interviews. And so that's why like I have an entire course about, you know, how to pitch yourself onto aligned podcast at your pace. And the thing is, I'm always encouraging my clients, like I would share my mistake with them about like how it was too much too soon. And I wasn't really able to honor the podcasters by being a guest. I wasn't able to like fully promote to the extent I would have loved to because it was too much in one go. And so for me now, I pitch at a pace I want. And I'm very fortunate to be in a position now where I do get invited to. But having the skill of being able to pitch yourself without needing to hire an external agency is a skill that I really want to equip as many small business owners as I can with, because especially if you have identities that need more safeguarding and need more consideration, being able to basically cherry pick which podcast you want to potentially guest on is quite a gift versus being pitched to a random bunch of podcasts that may or may not be a good values fit for you. So that is why I do what I do now. So I learned from that 101 challenge, never again. I tell it as a tale of caution to tell you, I've been in the trenches. I know what works. I've asked podcasters. And now, yeah, I hope to really infuse people with the skill on how to do it on their own terms.
And I just dropped a link because we talked even more about this on the podcast and that honoring of your capacity and your needs. And I think that's a big part of hustle culture is learning boundaries, learning how to set and enforce boundaries, how to value yourself enough to do that, which is very difficult inside of hustle culture. So Erica, can you talk a little bit about your journey of unlearning? What helped you with unlearning, checking out of unsubscribing from hustle culture?
I think it's ongoing, first off. I don't think that there's it's not a destination. It's always just when you think like, oh, I'm doing better. And then it's like, oh, wait, apparently I have doubled back and I need to do this again. There's always something that will come up to remind you that there's additional layers to unlearn because the systems and our families of origin conditioned us very well, for better or for worse. And so there's where it maybe shows up in work, but there's also where it shows up in life. And one of those things for me that has really stuck with me is how it could be so easy to think, oh, I am better when it comes to the hustle culture of work. And then I'm just going to get off of work and forget that that's work again. As a parent, taking care of a home, like managing a life is still work. And so there's this forgetting that work is work, and work is not just a way that we quantify the job that we get paid for. There's some type of monetary exchange, washing clothes, cooking, cleaning, grocery shopping, paying the bills, sitting on the phone with the IRS, the whatever the thing is that you have to do, it's work. And so we often forget that work is not as small of a bucket as we think it is. And it takes up a whole lot more of our lives. So part of what came up for me when I started to notice that I did not want to keep working multiple jobs. So when I began to work for myself, of course, there's that place that we all get to of like, I have just created the worst boss for myself and I cannot outrun them. I am with them 24/7. And I realized that, I don't want to work in this way. This isn't the example that I want to set for my children. This isn't the way that I want to interact with the world around me or lack thereof, because now I'm just burning myself out. But then I realized that I had such unrealistic expectations of, for example, when I had my kids, I nursed them both. And so it's like, okay, you're going to go to work all day. You're going to work on the weekends and go do weddings. You're going to have to stop in a parking lot somewhere and have to pump because that's what we do before we hop back on the road. You're going to go home. You're going to be mom. You're going to get up and you're going to keep doing this. You're not going to take care of yourself. You're not going to be able to pause. You don't ask for help, which means you also can't receive help. And I'm like, okay, this doesn't work. This doesn't work. And burnout really hit for me 2020 because all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, so you can help me to fend off the racists, right? Please help me. And being stuck at home with 2 children, trying to do school from home, me trying to run multiple businesses from home. And all of a sudden, as a Black woman in America, the whole world was grabbing at me and it burned me out. And there are still pieces of that I'm healing. And I'm just like, you won't do it again. I won't let it happen again. I don't want to be commodified in this way. There is no exchange that you can give me that is worth life force that I can't get back because I can't get that time back. That doesn't come back. And so I don't want to exchange money for my life. And I think that was a big piece of hustle culture for me that came up. Like, this isn't just, oh, I'll just sleep some more later, or it's fun. No. I am bartering with my time that I have on this earth, in this body, in this life. And that is not a Plinko chip. That is not a let's sit at the gambling table and play some blackjack and put this debt. No, I'm not going to do this. And so reminding people of what it means to truly be in community, part of that is that reminder that not only is hustle culture not okay, but hustle culture is part of what keeps us so hyper individualistic. If we are supporting one another and we're working in community factions, we don't have to work so hard because we are making sure that our needs are met, even exceeded, because we're not looking around and saying, oh, well, you didn't work, so you get nothing. It's like, no. I'm not going to watch you not have or go without. So you have, I have, you have. And so the whole point is being able to respect one another, who and how they are, and remembering that none of this is done on our own. Because the interesting piece about hustle culture is it is not separate from the hyper individualistic piece. And these people that want to sell the lie that I did it all on my own, I bootstrapped, you didn't fish, hunt, forage, or sew any of your own stuff. So you didn't do this on your own. None of us do it on our own. But when we consciously remember that and we support one another and we respect and honor and witness one another, it shifts the environment and hustle goes away because guess what? You don't have to. Because what is it for? Nothing. That is where the extraction comes in. I can talk about this all day, so I have to
Oh, and
pause
Erica,
because
I
I'm
could
just going to
listen
keep
to you
going.
talk. I could listen to you talk about it all day. It's so good and so, I mean, you're speaking my language. Anytime people start talking about community and collective care, I get so excited. It's just everywhere that I'm at right now with the same things, and everyone else wants to hear it too. Because yes, we need the reminder. And I love what you said too about if you can't ask for it, you can't receive it. You can't receive it if you don't ask for it. But I want to ask you both before we open the floor. So this will be the last thing, and then I want to open the floor because I think people probably have things they want to ask or add to the conversation. I want to ask about what you're doing differently now. And I'll start with you, Erica, because you were just talking about community. And I'm guessing that is for you a big piece of what helps keep you from getting sucked back into hustle culture. So what are those things that help you try to stay on this path of ease and of slowing down?
Oh, so it's interesting because I'm 44 and there's a lot of conversation around this quote unquote kind of middle of life pocket, this like 30s, 40s, even going into 50s of like, well, how do I find my people? Because some of us are looking up and recognizing that some of the people that maybe we've known or had around us for years, some are still aligned, some not so much. And we're just like making friends for some people. They're like, it doesn't feel the same. And part of what the conversation has been kind of uncovering is that it's really about being more of yourself and you'll continue to attract the right people. It's less about going out and trying to like do the like speed dating of friend building. It's more about doing the things that work for you, and those people will be attracted or repelled, because all of this is about calling in the right ones and pushing the wrong ones away. And a big part of letting go of hustle culture and moving more into equitable community spaces has really been about supporting people and letting myself be supported. When I do feel like my cup is hitting pan and I'm getting empty, I have to let people help me. I've had some stressful, I'll call it, moments recently, and I was just like, I can't do this. And I had people that were like, okay, whatever you're doing, stop where you are. Where are you? I am coming to you. And me recognizing that there are people that will do that for me, because I know that I have shown up for people in similar ways, and I didn't do it because I wanted anything back, but I had to remind myself that at some point, that's a part of what community is. I have to remember that I have to let them be the giver. I can't always be the giver, and that it is safe for me to receive. And that's another part of the deconditioning of hustle culture, because again, hyper individualism says you do it all on your own, you're an island. And letting people help me, being vulnerable enough to receive help, that has been huge. And that's part of where, when I shifted the work that I was doing to be less about, I'm going to, focus more on this allyship and more about, hey, the allyship is still there and so are the values. But I want you to work on healing so that you can better integrate into interdependent community and we can actually grow this, because this is a process. That has also been me doing my own work, me recognizing where I have to heal the wounds of knowing that I couldn't ask for help. I couldn't be vulnerable. I couldn't say I can't. I couldn't say that I was tired. I couldn't say I need, I want, I desire. And to even be open enough to think that someone was going to not only take that request from me, but be willing to fill it. And so I want to remind people that they can do that and that your people will be there. Your people are the ones that are going to send that random text when you don't expect it. It's like, hey, I didn't want anything. I just wanted to tell you you're awesome. It's like, oh, I didn't even know I needed that. And I did. Those are the people that are there when things aren't okay. Those are the people that answer the phone in the middle of the night. Those are the people that when you hug them, they know when you need it. And all of a sudden, your shoulders drop and you get that hug. Continuing to foster that personally and professionally, because the personal informs the professional, and it's a conduit. This is how we build it. This is how I want to be a part of this, because I don't want it to be built out here. I don't want it to be just mine. This is about me wanting to build something that I am a part of fostering collectively for all of us, because we all deserve better. And it has to start with me acknowledging that I deserve better.
Mm. That was a lot. Not in a bad way, in a good way. It was a lot. I feel like so many of us need to hear it. I know so many of my clients that are such givers, but when it comes to receiving,
And you break the conduit that way. You have to be able to receive. You have to, because then no one else can be a giver.
yeah. And if
Let
your
them have it.
giving is, if you're not able to receive because you don't believe anyone could give just because they want to give, I think there's also still some work to do around your own giving, right?
There's a trust that's missing. There's a tenderness around your heart of something that hurt or just simply didn't protect you. And you need to work on that to know that there are people out there that want to give and love and care and foster and witness similarly to you, however, in their own way. And that is just as valid. And that has to be able to be allowed to grow and breathe and swell and live.
I love it. Mai-kee, I want to hear from you too. I know community is important to you, but maybe are there other things that help you stay on the path of ease.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like I've just came back from a deep sleep because like listening to Erica's voice, I'm like, yeah, like tell me more. So Erica, you have a wonderful voice. So yes, everything that Erica just said and more. The first thing that came to mind for me was I truly believe that a huge part of hustle culture is upheld when we see people in a hierarchy. So a big reframe that I've taught myself to do, and I invite people to also consider this reframe as well, is I've had people tell me, I really look up to you. And there was always something about that that made me feel quite honestly uncomfortable. I'm like, why? Like, I know that I do cool things, but why? And I realized what it was. If you look up to someone, you are naturally looking down at yourself. So that's why the reframe I've taught myself and invite everyone here actually to tune into today is whenever you may catch yourself saying something of a similar language, like I'm looking up to this person. I now say, I look to this person. Someone who is undeniably further ahead. They have skills, experience that I don't have, but I yearn to learn from them. But that it changes the whole landscape for me when I literally there's a podcast episode that got released today, and the topic was my biggest mistake that made me in business was no longer idolizing or pedestalizing the leaders I've learned from, and it came from this reframe. Because again, I truly believe that a huge part of hustle culture is actually because of the people who still uphold these norms. So instead of looking up, try looking to them, see what you can learn. And there's actually a quote that Becky shared with me in a separate call about being the kind of leader that leaves the door open for the people who are behind us, like the people who haven't gotten to this point yet. And I love that because that was almost like a continuation of really wanting to build this collective union, which I am all here for. So, yes to this, yes to the community aspect. And I also believe that it's important to model what you want to be the norm. And sometimes that means taking the first step, even if no one else around you has done it before, even if you face scrutiny, adversity, still model what you want to be normal. So, for example, I used to profusely apologize for everything, even though I didn't need to. And now instead, I thank people for their time, right? Instead of like apologizing for taking up space and everything like that. I also am very clear with setting boundaries that are mutually beneficial. So when I make a new friend and we connect on Voxer, I let them know, by the way, I'm the kind of person who responds here and there, and this is not a reflection of how much I appreciate you. It's simply a reflection of the capacity I have to be truly present for the conversations that I love having with you. And very often they're like, I want to say this to new people now. Like I want to have these boundaries. And so, yeah, model what you want to be the norm. Stop asking for permission and inform people instead what you intend to do. That's what comes to mind for me.
Yeah, and you have an email responder that I see more and more people doing, but that's very clear about setting boundaries too. And I think boundaries again are such an important part of this. So I see you modeling it. I am going to stop recording here and open the floor. So if anyone has questions, feel free to raise your hand.